Welcome back, everybody. We have some breaking news out of Chicago related to the Jussie Smollett case. I actually want to read a statement from Jussie Smollett's attorneys in full. Here's what it says. Today, all criminal charges against Jussie Smollett were dropped, and his record has been wiped clean of the filing of this tragic complaint against him. Jussie was attacked by two people he was unable to identify on January 29th. He was a victim who was vilified and made to appear as a perpetrator as a result of false and inappropriate remarks made to the public, causing an inappropriate rush to judgment. Jussie and many others were hurt by these unfair and unwarranted actions. This entire situation is a reminder that there should never be an attempt to prove a case in the court of public opinion. That is wrong. It is a reminder that a victim, in this case Jussie, deserves dignity and respect. Dismissal of charges against the victim in this case was the only just result. This is some incredible, astounding news and surprising, to say the least. Joining me now, NBC News investigative reporter Andrew Blankstein. Ann Thompson is in our Chicago bureau, and MSNBC legal analyst Danny Savalos is with us on the phone. So, Ann, I'm going to start with you on this one. Take us through what you know so far.
Well, our producer, Samira Puskar, is in court, and she tells us that Jussie Smollett is straight-faced during this court hearing. He does not appear to be smiling. He does not appear to be happy, or he's showing no emotion. The records, apparently, in this case will be immediately sealed, which I think is very interesting. Remember, these are charges brought by the state of Illinois. What is unclear at this point is what happens to the federal investigation into this case. But as you said, Hallie, it really is just a shocking turn of events, because all of a sudden we heard here in the newsroom, we got rumors that Jussie Smollett was going to be in court today, and then suddenly it was something big, and then he's expected to speak after this court hearing. And the question is, what has happened? Why have prosecutors suddenly decided to drop the charges here? Are those two men who claimed they were the ones who beat up Jussie Smollett at his urging, have they been found to be lying? Are they not the real perpetrators? In fact, I think this decision raises more questions than it actually answers this morning.
Yeah, and just so you know, on one side of the screen, obviously, you're seeing these still images of Jussie Smollett himself, and we are awaiting him to exit that courtroom, and we have confirmation that he is going to be speaking to reporters outside that courtroom. So as soon as we get that, we're going to bring it to you. Andrew, I want to bring you into this conversation, because I know you've been following this story quite closely. We literally just got this, so I'm wanting our audience to bear with us as this story is developing. But what can you add to what Ann has been talking about?
Well, this bombshell is the latest in a number of twists in this case, and law enforcement has said that the FBI investigation will continue into this case. The question, again, really hinges on what happened with the grand jury testimony, what happened with the Osundairo brothers, what did they say? There was a recusal by the lead state attorney who was replaced. So all these, potentially factor in. But again, Chicago PD hasn't made any kind of a statement with regarding these facts, and we should expect that shortly. There's just a lot that we still don't know this morning, but it's quite a turn.
And I'm sure that you watched the press conference from the Chicago Police Department, as we all did a couple of weeks ago, when everything changed with regards to Jussie Smollett. This must have been incredibly surprising news to you, to say the least, this turn of events.
When I heard that there was going to be an emergency hearing, the first thought was, because of some of the things that have been going on vis-a-vis the Avenatti case and Mark Garagos being mentioned in that case, that somehow this was going to have to do with a new counsel. Then come to find out, no, all these 16 charges are going to be dropped. Remember, they had a 2-count indictment that was later added to a couple of weeks ago. And in fact, we were with Mark Garagos that day. He didn't say a whole lot, who was on a podcast, and he discussed it briefly. The amazing thing to me, again, is that given the twists and turns, this was really kind of the thing that I expected at this juncture, but it's a huge change.
All right, Danny, I got to bring you in to answer some of these legal questions that we have, because a lot of us are scratching our heads with so many of these questions. Obviously, as Andrew just talked about, these 16 charges dropped, 2 counts of indictment dropped. The case is going to be expunged. Records will be immediately sealed. Talk us through this. Why are these records being immediately sealed? What is your hunch here? What do you think is happening with regards to such a quick drop in all of these charges? What happens here with the federal investigation? Talk me through it, Danny.
It's only a hunch at this point, but just based on these facts, what we can glean is possibly that something went south very quickly in the prosecution's case. Often that can be a witness. It could have also been the product of some negotiation by his attorneys, of course. But if the prosecution believed for so long it had a solid case and then suddenly changed its mind, well, then that might be a reason for dismissing a case so quickly. And notice, it sounds like a full dismissal and expungement, not some sort of deal for what we call pretrial intervention, where he's going to do probation and then later on down the road he doesn't have to plead guilty, but his record is expunged. This appears at first blush to be a full unconditional dismissal, which only usually means that the prosecution's case has gone south. Now, remember, Jussie Smollett was investigated and charged in state court for disorderly conduct, which in Illinois can include making a false report to police. That can be a very serious crime, much more serious than the name implies, disorderly conduct. However, the federal investigation of the alleged letter that was sent, it will continue because that's an entirely different sovereign, an entirely different jurisdiction, and it involves the U.S. mails, which must be investigated very seriously. From the beginning, I've said that the state court case is Smollett, the least of Smollett's concerns. If the federal government concludes that he was involved or is complicit in sending a threatening letter through the U.S. mail, that is a much more serious crime than the disorderly conduct charges he faced in Illinois.
So talk me through, first of all, these records being immediately sealed. When you're saying the prosecution likely their case wasn't enough to bring forward, so hence the fact that they dropped these charges, who is it protecting by immediately sealing these records?
It's a very beneficial thing to Smollett, and to do it immediately. Every state is different. They provide for a form of what's called expungement. And that means really if a case resolves in a defendant's favor, depending on the rules in each state, he should be able to have his record cleared. And that includes his arrest record, because unfortunately, these things linger on the internet for forever. So as a criminal defense attorney, you always have an interest, if a case is dropped against your client, to see if you can get the entire record expunged. Obviously, there was no conviction, but that arrest record remains in the system. And so that expungement will benefit Smollett because the court will send an order around to the FBI, to the fingerprint division. All of these different places that had his information will hopefully expunge it after the court issues this order. But that's a benefit to criminal defendants if and only if a case resolves in their favor. You can't get a record expunged if you were convicted, served your time, and just have no more time to serve. So this immediate expungement, a process that normally in the states where I've practiced takes many months or even half a year or so to get done, to have that done immediately shows that the prosecution must have been very much on board with this entire deal, with the dismissal and the immediate expungement of his record.
So Andrew obviously brought up the brothers as well. The brothers' testimony, it was the brothers' relay of events from that evening that initially changed everything with regards to what Jussie Smollett took place. So does this become a he said situation? Danny, did I lose you?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, no, I thought that was for Andrew. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No. So I said Andrew brought up the question of the brothers. And
yes.
Basically, we know the brothers' sort of version of events from that evening is what changed the case, is what changed the case
Definitely.
for Jussie Smollett. It's what turned it on its ear. So does this become a he said situation where they were believing Jussie Smollett over the version of events that took place from the brothers' point of view?
That's a safe inference at this point, because a lot of this case, although there is some surrounding circumstantial evidence, there's video apparently, there are apparently allegedly payments with a check, things like that that we can make inferences about. But obviously key is the testimony of these two brothers who were not initially charged, were essentially absolved of all guilt from the outset. So that indicated that the police believed that they, if anything, they were unwitting dupes in Smollett's scheme. Now, perhaps that's been turned on its head. Perhaps the police have discovered something about their story, the brother's story, that doesn't add up in such a compelling way that they no longer believe there's any probable cause. And more than that, they're taking the affirmative steps of cooperating with dismissing the case in its entirety. This is an exceedingly rare thing for a prosecution to do. And really, the more that's coming out, it really seems to imply that something went seriously south in the prosecution's case.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me, or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.